It's like, even if this third time, even if this is the child that's actually born, it's like you're not gonna get there without blood, sweat, and tears, basically.
Yeah, there was gonna be no free lunch, as they say, like, it's just like, it was never it was never gonna be easy, and, we, that's all we could do. We took it week by week. We were going to adoration every week. We had, uh, I was praying certain prayers to Our Lady of La Leche. I was saying lots of prayers to Saint Joseph. I very much felt comforted by Saint Joseph's protection. Um, we had priests pray over us. We were open to all the graces God wanted for us, and sure
Speaking real quick,
slow.
speaking of priests praying over you, wasn't there? I remember you saying something earlier, like years before something. Did you go back to the shrine or something like that?
Yeah, so
No, I
uh
don't mean to make you jump way back, but
no, yeah, so like after our second loss, we went back to the shrine. We're like, let's ask let's we vacation there again, and let's ask the priest to pray over us again. And when we went there for mass, and we talked to this visiting priest who was just there for like a day or two, he said these beautiful prayers over us, and he was saying prayers like, I could see the child crying, I could see the laughter, I could see all these beautiful things. And at the end of the prayer, he was like, all right, let me know when the baby comes. And we were like, all right, another like awesome consolation.
wow.
And you know, so fast forward, we're going like, month 2, month 3, month 4, you know, where things are going well. Month 5, month 6. And we started noticing like one of the things the doctors were looking at was like our daughter was like, she was growing in the womb, but like at a slower rate. So she was gestationally on the smaller side, like her percentiles were going down. And that's usually because of like an immune response, or uh like maybe a placental issue, but they can only assess like so much, outside of that. So I remember at one point they measured my daughter's femur. Like they can measure like the bones and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And they said your daughter's femur's in the 1 percentile. And I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, they're like, oh, it's like, the doctors were like, it's not a big deal as long as she keeps growing. I'm like, is she gonna like be like, 4 foot when she's like an adult? Like, I don't know what that means. It's just like so many unknowns, and I think when you're going through the unknown, all you have is to just all you have is to rely on God and to pull you through it. And we kept praying to Father Solanus Casey, and we were hitting like the 8th month, and the doctors were like, hey, look, uh we typically want the child to come early because she's on the smaller side. We don't want her to be in the womb any longer. And we were gonna like, we'll we'll set up where we would, you know, put you in labor, and we'll have the baby early. And we're like, okay. So we scheduled that, and uh a week later, my wife's like having all these contractions, and I'm like,
Naturally.
well, yeah, so naturally she started like having all these like contractions, which we weren't sure if they were just like, you know, Braxton Hicks or whatever they call them. And you know, we had like another week to go before my wife would have got induced. And I remember it was the middle of the night, and um she she's like, hey, like something's like going on, like I think we need to go. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So we drove through the middle of the night to the hospital. And thanks be to God, um, that afternoon, my daughter was born.
We get an
An
applause.
absolute yeah, an absolute miracle. I remember she came out and she was screaming, and I was like, "Yes, that's good." And, they had, like, a team there because they knew, like, my wife was high risk and, like, the baby was on the smaller side, and they were like, gonna have oxygen and all this stuff, and she came out and she was, like, perfectly healthy and didn't need any medical treatment, and, I remember holding her for the first time, and that 30 the first, like, hour of her life, I feel like the world stopped, and yeah, it was just awesome.
Well,
Um,
and what's her name?
Rosalia. So, Rosalia Carmela Maria Giuseppina Mangiarelli. So a nice Irish name, and, we had to get the Holy Family in there, especially Joseph. Yeah,
Yeah.
I even when I was praying to God, I was like, "If I have a boy, I'm gonna name him Joseph." And then we found out we're having a girl, and Lenore's like, "Giuseppina?" And I'm like, or Josephina or Josephine. I'm like, "We'll think about it," because then we came across Saint Rosalia, who we really like. So, we named her after her. Um, and yeah, so we now have this beautiful 19-month-old daughter who's just a little busy person who's super sweet and can't imagine like, I'm sure people say this about their children all the time. You can't imagine a better child. Like it was
Mm.
worth the wait. It was
Mm.
worth the 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 constant the the trials, the tribulations, the constant like giving that hope back to God, uh, the constant being nailed to the cross, you know, to finally being fulfilled and like this area of our life been resurrected. And it's I mean, it's something like I think it's easy for parents to take for granted of having kids. And I'm just like we're just like so blessed, like it's amazing and like um we, it just feels like time has slowed down and it's just, you know, God is it's in retrospect God was so close to us during that whole process, but we're kind of blinded by just all the fear and worrying but you know, I'm not saying we were perfect by any means, but you know, I think um, all along, God, I think that that miraculous medal that was placed in my hand, saying this is going to be for your daughter one day, that was God's like way of saying like you have to trust me, and you know, and here she is.
It's crazy too that that was near the beginning, right? That
Yeah,
miraculous metal thing was like early on.
yeah, yeah. It was really early on, and we always thought it was going to happen way sooner than that. Not 7 years. Um, and coincidentally, seven's like a year, like it's a good biblical number. I believe it's like meant for uh like harvest or something like that, or somebody told me. But like it's like you know um we finally
You had your
you know
harvest.
g- yeah, yep, amazing.
Yeah, glory to God. I was so overjoyed when when um obviously when she was born and just knowing everything you guys went through. And it's so interesting when we detach, you know, um like our children aren't ours. And the thing is like we're kind of always adoptive parents in a way of our children because they're not ours. And even now, like, as I don't know how you feel, but as a father myself, like, I've I've gone through periods. It's actually funny. I think you went through it before, and I've had to deal with this after they were born, of what Abraham did, where he was asked, like you mentioned earlier, asked, like, are you willing to sacrifice your son or your child? At any given moment, God asks you to. Can you let go? And I've had to face that in my own personal journey, of like moments where I've had to the best of my ability, by God's grace, have that willingness that you had developed beforehand, that we are still called, and of course you're still called. Like, your parent is never not called to be willing to let go of their child in any way. It doesn't just mean life or death, but it could be in a situation or whatever it is. Not to idolize them still, and to remember that they're God's. But what's so cool about you and Lenore is that you, this holy, I say this increasingly a lot. I said it in another interview, but like a holy indifference in the best way possible, the uniformity with God's will. And now that you guys got, you received the gift that you wanted for 7 years at least, but you don't, it's like properly ordered now. Like, when I look at you guys, it's not like, oh, we got our daughter and she's our everything and she's our princess and we're gonna splurge on her, we're gonna give her the best life and she'll never suffer. And I don't get that from you guys at all. I get it's totally balanced, it's totally ordered. You don't idolize your child. She now fits properly into your family unit, but your marriage is like like there's no doubt that your marriage is that you both know it's first and foremost, and that's going to actually be one of the most fruitful things you can give your daughter, is like that you love your wife first and foremost, and that everything flows from that. All love flows from that to your daughter, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, you think one day, like, you know, your children are going to grow up and they're gonna have to find what their vocation is. And at some point, it's just gonna be you and your wife again. Like, it's just you two. And then, if they become a priest or nun or married or, whatever their calling is, like, they're gonna be that's where they're gonna need to be. And they're essentially, like, no longer yours, you know? And you have to show your kids, like, that is the way. So the only way to do that is putting your marriage first. That they could see you set the example. So, if your son one day wants to become a priest, he's gonna be married, to the church. But what better way of seeing that than seeing how you are married, to your wife, you know? So, um, I think people kinda miss that, like, that it's really easy to think like, yeah, like, my daughter's gonna be in my life forever, like, I don't know what God's will is for her, but one day if she's called to marriage, then, like, her husband becomes the single most important person in her life, not her dad and not her mom, you know? And, that's why it's the only sacrament where two become one flesh, you know? So, it's not just nice fancy words, it's a real reality.
Thank you for watching, for your time. I pray that this conversation can help at least even one person in need, and that it gave you uh, hope. If you did like it, please support by liking, sharing, subscribing, and if you want to donate either a prayer or monetarily, it's incredibly helpful. I don't take it for granted. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one. God bless.